And so our next speaker is Sejal Dhaliwal, she's a cell and molecular biology student, and she's going to talk about environmental justice for the Duwamish Valley and the Quinault Indian tribe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sejal, and today my Earth Talk is From Suffocation to Mobilization, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color Communities and Environmental Justice. So to start off, what is environmental racism? It's many factors, such as slavery and Jim Crow laws, Indigenous massacre and seclusion, and immigrant mistreatment, and more factors, which have led to a white hierarchy of power, and that's associated with redlining and gentrification, which leads to certain communities living near environmental hazards, and that's associated with adverse health outcomes. So for an example of what that unfortunately looks like in our local community is the Duwamish Valley. It's a majority non-white, and about 21% live below the poverty level. And there's lots of industrial sites there, all intermixed with single and multifamily housing. And there's over 150 contaminated river sites at least, but only a quarter of them have been cleaned. And there are higher rates of diabetes, asthma, and even lower life expectancies. So flooding hazards are two of kind of the worst, or what is one of the worst problems in our area. For example, recently there's been king tide in, I think, January and December. That's led to the temporary evacuation of homes, and the toxins that were in the Duwamish River were delivered straight to the homes. And then kind of similarly on the Western Peninsula of Washington, the Quinault Indian Nation, there's been rising sea levels, and they've actually had to permanently relocate. And less obviously, there's been a loss of salmon, which is associated with the loss of culture for them. And how can we kind of fix this? We can leverage BIPOC voices to improve flooding hazards. So one example is Paulina Lopez, who's the Duwamish Valley Community Coalition Director, and she's advocating to extend assistance to flooding victims, home safety assessments because the toxins were delivered straight to the homes, as well as setting up a permanent river barrier. And then similarly, Quinault Indian Nation Vice President Fawn Sharp, she's actually gathered $25 million for the relocation, but it's only the quarter of the costs. So more federal support is necessary. And these are good solutions, but they're still advocating to turn the tide with revolutionary policy changes because there are still systemic needs that remain, and we need to get to the root cause. And so how do we do that? It's research, looking at research and using well-informed, especially interdisciplinary research to guide those policy changes. So one recent example that is research that engaged the Duwamish Valley Youth Corps to map heavy metals with moss. And with that, they've been able to get a better understanding of the spatial patterns of the air pollution. And next steps include adding more air monitoring instruments and also adding green infrastructure near the Duwamish Valley. As you can see, there's a lot of green areas right outside the Duwamish Valley, but right near the river, there's very little. And so that can help immediately improve air quality and mitigate problems in that area. And for future directions, one good thing that has happened is the Infrastructure Investments Job Act. That's devoted $13 billion to federally recognized tribes nationwide, and part of that goes to environmental justice. However, the Duwamish tribe isn't eligible at all because they're not federally recognized, and they argue that that's been hard to achieve because they've been burned out of their homeland. You need long-standing records for that. But the good news is that they've established a real rent project, which asks for donations from the community. And that has increased their tribal income significantly. And so hopefully we can donate all to that and also work with the Washington legislature to help them become a federally recognized tribe. And so in conclusion, I know we're all trying to aim toward a climate crisis prevention. In order to do that, we know we need to learn from our mistakes and reduce state carbon emissions so that the climate change does not destroy BIPOC communities in the first place. And I hope that the Washington state legislature can work with the BIPOC communities to lift the boulder that suffocates them, and together all of us can correlate at climate change.
All right, really nice job, Sejal. Thank you. So our next speaker is Shannon Britton. Shannon is the Assistant Director of Grounds and Waste Management for Seattle